Just the one button. Just the one button. Just the one button.
I had the one button and then it popped open. I'm like, no, I'm not going with the one button, apparently.
Hit the camera.
Too many poutines, yeah. Yeah. If I put the buttons on, it just becomes a 3D show. Like, buttons.
This one playing for intro. Right? Or
Yes.
that one?
Whichever one you want, really.
Oh, we have options.
Yeah,
This-
'cause
this-
he's on us too now.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just you and the guest, and there's no guest. So.
Not yet. He's right there. It's not like, welcome to our imaginary show with our imaginary guest. Today we have Gordon Ramsay. How are you, Gordon? Just do like a really bad comp of it.
After this seance.
Yeah.
He doesn't like your food.
Are we good to go? We're filming then?
Yeah, we're
Go,
filming.
leave it.
Yeah, we're rolling.
Robert, you all ready?
I'm ready.
All right, our next guest is the former Liberal MP for Winnipeg Centre. He was in the military for 20 years, and nowadays, we're not sure. We think he squeegees windows downtown, but we're going to find out. Help me welcome to the stage, Robert Falcon Ouellette.
Gentlemen, right here.
Robert, it's great to have you. How you doing?
Good, good. I thought I'd put on my Joe Biden glasses. Let me put them right there. And I got that little face mask. It's from Taiwan. Can you see that right there?
Awesome, yes, indeed.
You do a close up, but it's Taiwanese, so it's not Chinese product. It's actually Taiwanese product.
Are you running for something again? Is
I'm
that-
ready. I'm just pointing out that some countries are a little bit safer than others, and so this is a mask which is it's got a light scent of jasmine to it.
So you're
it's
letting us
very
know that-
comfortable around the nose, and I'm not selling them.
That's awesome.
I was just gonna say, are you sponsored by these masks?
I like that he's letting us know how well they work as he takes it off.
Yeah.
Well, I trust you, right?
You shouldn't. You
You
shouldn't.
know,
no.
Yeah.
But welcome to the show, Robert. It's great to have you here. I don't know if you remember, we did a show several years back. First time I met you, we did a show. We were doing a fundraiser for a daycare. You were one of the guests there, and I sat on stage, and you were laughing at some of the most horrendous jokes that I was telling. I was like, "You're running for mayor. You should be kissing babies and not laughing at the crap that I'm saying right now." But it
Well,
was.
you can't have a sense of humor in politics?
I'm not sure. I mean, we do have Donald Trump, so I guess we have to have a sense of humor in politics, right? But yeah, it's great to have you. Like I said, we introduce all kind of people on this show. We interview all kinds of people, and we thought that you were a very interesting person. We were there for your mayoral run, and I was supporting you in that. It didn't work out so great, but then you did the run in the Liberal politics, and
Federal,
I'd like
yeah.
to know, so how was that for you?
It was a good time actually. I had really enjoyed myself. Got some really good things done for Winnipeg Centre. More money. Laid the groundwork I think for a lot of the programs we're having today. But also really tired. I have to admit, I've never worked so hard in my life. 100 hour per week.
Yeah.
Day in, day out. You get up at 6 in the morning. You go to bed at 2 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. You get up. But even your worst day is your best day.
Yeah. Because you're working in media now.
Well, but even yeah, but even if you have every day, you can actually really impact change in government policy. And what you find in Ottawa is you find a lot of people come from a lot of the same social backgrounds. So a lot of middle class people, a lot of lawyer types. Just had a conservative leadership campaign. All 4 of them were lawyers. I don't think any of them have ever set foot in the real Winnipeg Centre. They might have been downtown, maybe at Manitoba Hydro a couple times to check out the Hydro building. Who knows if they were coming through? But they've never actually really gone to the West End or other areas of the city. They don't actually see what real people's lives are like.
Yeah.
And so when you go to Ottawa, that's what you fight for, and that's what you should be doing anyways in politics.
I think that they're on the Facebook People of Winnipeg page, and they figure that's enough. They understand.
Yeah, they got enough
Right,
exposure.
yeah.
Like, well, we'll go downtown, but around the law courts building, around there, we'll stay there.
And near City Hall,
Yes.
just in the court there.
So when you were an MP, you were the chair of the Indigenous Caucus.
I was,
So
yeah.
I had a question. Is it true that the Indigenous Caucus is bigger than the average white caucus?
Well, we want to talk about that.
I had to go there.
We don't want to make anyone uncomfortable.
No.
But the Indigenous Caucus was actually the largest in the 2015 federal elections. The largest number of Indigenous MPs ever elected, and with the changes to the Senate, I think we have about 11 senators now who are Indigenous as well. So we have the largest group of parliamentarians in Canadian history who are Indigenous. So it's a huge change.
It's awesome.
And a lot of these colleagues are great people. They work very hard. We get changes in CRTC, the Canadian Radio Telecommunications. So more money for Indigenous programming, more money for APTN, more money for mental health, for schools. We actually got funding for Indigenous schools up to the Canadian average and beyond and above what the average school receives in Canada. So. These are all good things, but you have to have someone fighting for it and talking about it. If you don't talk about it, no one cares.
It's fantastic to actually have a voice and be represented. And I've been saying for years that we are going to see some changes eventually with the Indigenous representation, just because we have so many more babies than they do. So they're going to have to start. These people are going to grow up and become voters, so you better start programming.
Have more babies. Have more babies.
And I think it's absolutely fantastic that we're getting straight from you that APTN and that got more money. So when we go to them with this show and they say they can't afford it, we will know that they are lying.
They are lying. They have lots of money.
There you go.
Yeah.
Coming to a network near you.
So speaking of more babies, Robert, you have 5 children?
I do, yeah.
So is that a difficult balancing life and politics?
I love it actually. I was just with my kids all last week. Had them over and they were a lot of fun. I was teaching trumpet lessons and trombone lessons, and I discovered my 8-year-old, actually my little girl, is actually an amazing trumpet player. And usually you start. I don't know if you've ever played trumpet in band.
No.
Have you ever played band music? High school band.
No. We like music. We've never played it.
Anyway, you buzz your lips and and you toot the horn. And usually people can't do it very well when they start out, and they're usually at the bottom. But my little girl Abigail was literally in the middle of the range already, and I just had to go. And I was trying to get her to play lower, but the problem's not playing lower later on in life. The problem is getting the trumpet to play really high, because that's what you want the jazz players playing super high. So now I have to rethink how I'm going to teach her to play trumpet. And I'm going to start not at the bottom range, I'm going to start right away at the middle. She, at 8 years old, and who knows what, actually, I'm kind of stoked actually about it, because I didn't think she'd be able to do anything. She was awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of the musicians that I know, they do play super high as well when they're on stage.
Sometimes some of the music, actually, we teach stuff really poorly nowadays.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but a lot of stuff, people take band, and sometimes we don't really have a good understanding how to teach things. And it's just kind of hit and miss, and some students get it and some don't, and some carry on.
Sure, you can get left behind pretty quick.
You get left behind, and you get put on that tuba.
Yeah.
Or you get the triangle and you're in the butt,
Well, I'm still trying to figure out how to play hot cross buns on the recorder, so I think I'm just a failure in that regard. Robert, I got a question for you. I've worked in a couple higher offices, Manitoba Office of Children's Advocate, Office of the Ombudsman, and I'm not going to pick on this specific office, but when I came to this one government office, as soon as I got there, they put me on the Aboriginal Outreach Committee right away. You're on the They didn't ask me. I would have wanted to be on it, but right away. And I almost felt like it was hey, we got a brown face, let's put our brown face forward. It's kind of frustrating. I felt like you can't have Aboriginal outreach just by throwing a dream catcher on your wall. So I know in the past, a lot of times in politics, there really has been lip service to Aboriginal people. Do you feel that is, I feel like an actual reporter.
Yeah.
But do you feel like that's been
Of course,
changed?
I was on the finance committee in Ottawa, so we were the ones doing the budgets and doing the budget planning. The spending of $200 billion a year for the Canadian federal budget, and I was the only Aboriginal or Indigenous person on this committee. And we'd have witnesses come, and what you see in the States is why are you doing this? What are you doing? And why? And you're questioning the government of the Bank of Canada, what he's doing and why he's doing it. And I'm the only person asking any questions on Indigenous issues. And that lasted for about 13, 14 months. And then I remember my colleague, O'Connor from Pickering, Ontario, the MP O'Connor, Jennifer, and she asked a question about Indigenous issues. And I was like, my time was coming up, and I didn't have to ask a question on Indigenous issues. For the first time, I remember I was almost crying, I can actually focus on other stuff, which is also important.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the token Indian
Mhm.
or an indigenous person, a native, or whatever term we like to use. I heard we had some comedy about that today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't have to be that one person always asking the indigenous question. There were some other people starting to take that role up as well. So that was good to find that we have some allies. But I agree. Like a lot of organizations, you show up and hey, you're the person, you're the lady, you're the man who are going to have to ask those questions.
Yeah, we would have 20 items, agenda items on our committee meeting list, and all of the minutes were my name beside like 3/4 of the Nelson will give us an update because I was the only one being slow to do anything. So, I mean, it was nice that they were trying, but it was frustrating that it just seemed like lip service to me. So, I really enjoyed seeing that.
Was it really lip service, or was it, or
Back
maybe just
then, I
nervous?
just felt.
Oh, back then.
For me, this was about a decade ago, and I
Okay.
felt like it was really just lip service. Like, look at us, we got the dream catcher on the ball, and we've hired a brown person. I really felt that. I felt like I've worked hard for everything I've attained, and I don't want to say that I got it just because I was Aboriginal, but in this one specific instance with this organization, it really felt like that to me. And I thought, I could look at that in a negative thing, or I can think like, I got my foot in the door, so what can I do now that I'm being here, right? So that's kind of what I did. And I really loved watching your career as a politician because you've always been very outspoken, I have felt, and I think it's gotten you in trouble sometimes.
Oh yeah, you better believe it.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a minister, yelling at me once. We were, I won't say which one, but I got up in caucus, and in caucus it's behind closed doors. It's just the MPs from the governing party, and I got up and I said what the caucus was feeling, the Indigenous caucus, and because I was a spokesperson, and we weren't happy with some of this minister's policies. And afterwards, he comes out in the hallway, we're arguing, and we're having a little yelling match in the hallway behind, and a couple of MPs are like, oh, Robert, calm down, and Minister, you need to calm down. But you do have to fight that good fight, because if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, though, you can be very polite and just say, hey, this is something you need to think about. You need to think about this, and we need to do something for this. And if we don't do something for this, it's going to be a huge consequence later on. Even the CFS, child welfare, the federal government didn't want to have any legislation when I first arrived in Ottawa. And by the end, we managed to get a couple ministers interested, Jane Philpott, notably, and eventually we had legislation which was passed, which gives full control to Indigenous peoples and nations about their own children. The federal government or the provinces aren't going to control their kids, provincial CFS agencies, but Indigenous peoples themselves will manage their own children.
Yeah.
We're going to make mistakes, as Leroy Little Child said, but at the end of the day, at least we're going to have the opportunity of making those mistakes and doing better.
Yeah.
And we care. Also, like, these are our children. We're going to, we might make a little bit of a mistake, but we're going to do our very best to make sure each and every child is looked after. But that's the type of things you can do when you're in Ottawa, and you sometimes get behind those closed doors, and they shut the door. And when you have discussions around the table of power, you can get that change that you're looking for.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention is in comedy these days, it really seems like you have to kind of be careful what you say, what you post online.
Really?
It can be very misrepresented. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
surprised. I know.
I thought that was just in politics.
So, and that's what I was going to get to, right? Because I know in the last election, there were some concerns within the Aboriginal community, with some comments that you had made regarding Colton Bushy, and we can cut this part if we need to later. I'm just curious, because I understood what you were saying, right? And there was I think people felt like you were showing support for Gerald Stanley, which wasn't at all the case.
No.
But I think that got really lost in the media.
Yeah, we love social media because it may, like the headline has to catch people. It's supposed to be about bait. We throw in a little fish line, we get you involved, or get the reader to read the article.
Yeah.
But if you have to go through a paywall, you're actually not going to read the article on Winnipeg Free Press. But really, what I said about the Colton Bushy, yes, there is racism, but at the same time, I'm also I'm just trying to actually make sure that we don't burn down all the bridges, because there is a lot of racism in Saskatchewan. My reserve is in Saskatchewan, in Battleford, and there are, when I go back to Battleford, you hear about racism. I talk to people who are non-Indigenous, and they'll say something, and you kind of go, well, is there a better way of thinking about that? We were talking about Filipinos earlier, and it's important. Some people will say things about the Filipinos, and it's important. why are there no white people working at the Tim Hortons anymore?
Yeah.
They've stolen our jobs, and they kind of go, well, there's all sorts of issues wrapped up in that. But I'm a big believer about trying not to salt the earth every time. It's easy to be angry, and I know there's people who are activists and who have to push the envelope. But I felt my role at that time was just trying to find a way of getting people to sit down and talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt the issue in Saskatchewan, especially, is it's so explosive that people don't want to talk to each other. How many times have you heard of a city council and a band council in rural Manitoba or Saskatchewan or Alberta actually sitting down and doing a conjoint meeting together?
Mm-hmm.
They don't do that.
Yeah.
That's insane, because you're managing like large areas of land and you're not talking to each other.
Yeah.
They do this in Nova Scotia. I don't know if you know that. People have these conversations, but we're not doing that here in the West. And how do you actually then govern, and how do you create policy that's going to benefit everyone? You can't do that if one group feels, oh, you're attacking me and I'm attacking you and we can't talk to each other. And yeah, there is racism in the RCMP, there's racism in police forces, there's racism in government, there's systemic racism, which is about government or policies of organizations which control people's lives. But how do we actually then criticize and then build on that and construct something a new day?
Mm-hmm. And in fact, there's actually racism on this show, as we saw Clayton mocking Filipino people earlier. We're going to play that and try to get Clayton canceled at some point. So
Just
I
out
think
of
we have a new
context,
goal.
just have me doing a terrible impersonation of a Filipino person.
So also at one point, I know that you had, I said that you were very outspoken, you did things in a different way, which I really liked about you when you were in politics. But at one point you had built a teepee in Central Park.
Yeah.
And decided to live in that for a few days to raise awareness for
The violence in Central Park. I don't know if you remember, there was a lot
I
of
remember I
violence.
used to walk through Central Park. I used to live down there.
Two
and I
summers
would walk all the
ago,
time.
2 summers ago, there was a young man who was walking his girlfriend home, and they were going through Central Park, and he was stabbed, I think, 17 times in the face.
Mhm.
And the father of this young man, who was about 17 or 18, put out said, this is unacceptable, and this is what's going on in our city.
Mhm.
And he called the mayor and said, I dare you to come down to this park, and the mayor didn't come.
Yeah.
But I said, okay, well, if the mayor's not going to go, and I don't control the police force as an
Mhm.
federal MP, but I said, you know what, I have a teepee. I'm going to go in the park and I'm going to be with the people, and I erected it. I had an elder who was Winston Watson, who helped me put it up, and then I slept out, and I gotta say, it was really cold. It was September, and it was freezing at night. Like, we were huddled in that little teepee, and I couldn't start a fire because it's the artificial turf.
Yeah.
You don't want to get the artificial, fire. Like, I could have an artificial fire maybe, but.
I think that would have got you shut down pretty quick. You started the fire.
But actually, I was talking to residents. Actually, what they said is the violence actually for that little while actually calmed down for a number of weeks after that. It actually came to kind of abated because and some people came up and they said what they saw. The people who know, they said a lot of people who were having a lot of personal difficulties in their own lives, alcoholism, drug addictions. They saw the TV and they said, well, there's a spirit there. We need to respect that. We're going to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went elsewhere. The other people who were attracted to it came and they were talking, and we had really great conversations. We did a pipe ceremony a couple times a day there. I had people joining and participating. I had the other come and we sang some songs. I made some really great friends. Henry Bruce, if he's out listening, he popped by. The Bear Clan came to look out after the teepee for a couple of nights. I had some people who wanted to sleep in the teepee who came in and slept in the teepee, who were homeless, and that was interesting.
Yeah.
Good conversations. But it was a fun. But I think if you're the MP in Winnipeg Centre, I think there's so many MPs in middle class neighborhoods, suburbs, who can be nice and boring.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're going to represent Winnipeg Centre, you got to push the envelope.
Yeah.
You can't sit and relax and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to play it safe and be calm and not do something strange. If you want to be like an average boring politician, go, and I won't name a riding, but maybe go downtown Toronto or Halifax or
We were
somewhere else.
actually talking about that earlier, about how you should just embrace the whole bad boy politics thing and just call yourself the fella. Like just be like a bad guy wrestler and just, you know, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Or just take up a career in wrestling, that's perfect.
Or that
I
too,
don't
yeah.
think I'm big enough to take up the career of wrestling.
I think you can pull it off, yeah. Your finishing move would be the House of Commons, I think. Because it's painful to sit through, right?
We had 50-hour votes, and I loved every minute of it. Yeah, like, we would vote for 50 hours straight,
Yeah.
non-stop, and you'd show up at 5 p.m. at night, and you'd be there still at midnight, and 2 days later, and it would be the day that never ends, and you'd be up and down,
Yeah.
up and down, doing your voting. It was awesome. I loved sitting in the House
So
of
you're a
Commons.
masochist, okay?
Yeah,
of course.
No, what I absolutely love about you, Robert, is the fact that you are genuinely excited about every aspect of your job. Like there's nothing that you talk about that doesn't sound like it was the best thing ever. Like,
Well, politics is actually a lot of fun, dude. It's really interesting. You meet interesting people. I met the President of France, of England, but besides that, then there's also the people in your riding who have interesting stories. Like you get to hear people's lives. You get to hear about Captain Winnipeg and the things that Captain Winnipeg is doing.
If you go to your office and go do it, which you've been doing, which I think is great. Robert, do you have any plans in the future of maybe running again?
Renting. What am I renting?
Renting that tuxedo?
I bought this at on discount. It was on sale, but I won't say a word. But
yeah, unless they sponsor the show, and then we'll have their logo right there.
but my future plans, well, I think I'm probably going to run again. I'm waiting for the next election, but I got a funny joke for it. So, after the election is over, I lost. Sad. I was one on the left flank of the party, so I was kind of, we went down, and some issues the prime minister had during the election, caused that dissent, and that's okay. But I'm still going around Winnipeg, and I have people, shaking me and shaking hands, and Robert, good job, you won, and congratulations, I need help with this project, and I'm like, yeah, but I lost. Really? And I still get that today. Like I was just walking around when I was in the Canadian Tire Fermor, and some guy walks up and he's talking to me, and then I'm like, I didn't win, right? No.
And people just want you to win so bad that they're like.
Well, actually, so even during the election, I had people telling me, you know what? I don't need to vote for you. I'm going to vote against you, but I'm actually not voting. I'm voting against your boss or someone else.
Oh, okay.
But I know you're gonna win, and you're gonna be okay, and you're gonna have victory anyways. We'll be there and celebrating with you, so you'll be fine. And every night I would go out and I would hear people saying that to me. It reminded me of that Simpsons episode. Where Bart was running for class president. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And everyone said, yeah, we're all gonna vote for you, and then no one voted for him. Only Martin had that one vote. He voted for himself, and he won the election. He was class president.
It's kind of like some people think it's like band politics, where they got a president on council. So can you help me with that speeding ticket? So also, Robert, I was reading online that at one point in your life, you lived in Winnipeg and you were homeless. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So my mother had lost her job, and I remember actually we had we were in a townhouse, and she was selling the furniture little bit by little bit, and then all of a sudden there's no furniture in the house. The beds are kind of sold, and then we're kind of in the Hyundai Pony, was the car back then, and we're kind of driving around, and we were camping in parks and stuff like that. And I don't know, as a kid, it was kind of fun.
So when you decided to build that teepee, it was like, well, this is a step up.
This is a step up. This is but a teepee's hard to move around the city. You need a truck. I don't know if you've seen my car. It's a Toyota Echo. One smashed in front.
I haven't seen it, but we were gonna ask for a ride home after.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But it was it's part of the reasons also. I think I'm a little bit unusual in Ottawa is that when someone does talk about some of the people who are working class or who are maybe not bankers and lawyers in Toronto. I have experience in that. I know what it's like not to have food on the table, to what it's like to have to use welfare, or to see the desperation in your mother's eyes when she can't really afford Christmas presents that year, and all of a sudden there's a guy showing up at the door with a cardboard box full of some fat fish, and you're kind of like, oh, there's a turkey and there's some cream corn and
Yeah.
other things. Don't put cream corn, just normal corn is fine.
You know, I think it's cruel. I had the same experience growing up. We lived in public housing, and all of us kids were embarrassed to be on social assistance. So when we get the Christmas hampers, we'd be like, "Oh, that's not for me. That must be for my neighbor, right?" But it was exciting for us as poor kids to go through the Christmas hamper. But this is the cruel part: is somebody gave me Nutella. I never got Nutella when I was a kid. This is cruel. I thought this was every year I was going to get the Christmas hamper so I could have Nutella. And the second year,
No
But yeah, I remember growing up in poverty, and we were always pretending that we weren't. And everybody was in the same boat. That's the crazy thing. But we grew up in St. Patel in the suburbs, but we lived in Manitoba housing, so we went to school with very affluent kids, and we were like embarrassed because our moms would come home with bags of Byway clothing. Right?
Byway, absolutely, yeah. They're making a comeback from what I hear.
Oh, yeah. You ready to start shopping?
Absolutely, yeah, I remember Byway.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fantastic watching your career unfold, and I don't know where you're going in the future, but I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that your appearance on this show doesn't hinder that at all. But
We will find out.
we will find out.
We
Yes.
will find out.
And if you
the day
need
after
speech
posting.
writers, we're available.
Oh, yeah? Oh, dangerous.
Yeah. So thanks again for coming out, Robert. Really
Tango
appreciate it.
Yakikitwan.
Thank you very much.
Tango
Round of applause for
Yakikitwan
Robert.
and Yakikitwan. Until next time.
Well, now I
That's great.
There you go.
But I know no Korean. I know how to wake up. That's it. Because you flicked me in the eyeball.
That's great. Wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. Wake up. Flick in the eye. Thanks again, Robert Falconer. Round of applause.
Big round of applause for Robert.
Joe Biden glasses go on.
Yeah.
Not the food.
I need to do no wrap up because we're gonna.
Except I have the brown hair. He's
Yeah.
got the white hair.
Yeah, I love it.
No wrap up. Is Paul still here?
We're just going back upstairs and something.
Should we get a?